Hello, everybody. Welcome to Behind Their Success podcast. I'm Peyton Squires, the host, and today we have on Sal Tirabassi. Sal is a seasoned financial strategist, fractional CFO, and private equity investor with over 25 years of experience guiding high-growth companies. He's raised over $400 million for startups, served on boards of industry leaders, and is renowned for helping entrepreneurs achieve financial clarity and scale. Sal, good morning. Welcome on Behind Their Success.
Hey, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, Sal. So give us kind of like the high overview is like what Sal do right now?
Right now, I run a business called CFO Pro Analytics, and it's basically an outsourced strategic CFO services business. A lot of people call the actual work sort of fractional CFO work. But ours is, we're a boutique service, private equity grade capabilities. And we make sure that the client is engaging on the strategic CFO work. And as part of the analysis that we do while we're working on a scope of work, we can fill in other layers of the finance and accounting stack with our own team to give them like a full permanent part-time service that saves them money, but gives them very, very high value. I say it's like all the meat, no fat kind of thing.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I mean, especially, you say you're working at, companies that are growing up and maybe potentially looking at private equity deals or whatnot. That's so crucial when you're going down that type of path as an entrepreneur. Man, you better have your stuff together.
Exactly.
Right? So can you speak to that a little bit of like, I guess just like, okay, lots of entrepreneurs here, probably listening and have the dream of, exiting their business someday. Can you just kind of speak to like why it's so important to have those financials buttoned down?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of different directions I can go with that question. Sure. But when you're thinking about specifically like I'm here at my point A and point B is I want to sell my business or sell a majority of it or bring in an investor who's going to buy equity in my company. One of our key themes when we deliver our service, there's three. Everybody gets us a customized product offering from us, but they all have three key themes. One is single source of truth on data. Two is equity value creation. And the third is due diligence readiness. And due diligence readiness is related to getting to point B. And the reason that you need to have your numbers buttoned up is that the historical actuals need to be explainable and transition into a very reliable, robust forecast will demonstrate the value creation that can happen in the business when the new investor comes in. And they're in there in a very serious way looking at these numbers because they're basing, their whole decision, at least from a number standpoint on it. Obviously, they really want to know the management team, understand what systems you're using, figure out what other issues there are in the company. But the numbers are the main platform that they build the whole investment thesis off of. And it's not like halfway is not going to get you there. 80% of the way is not going to get you there. If you want to be locked down, and what I always tell my clients is, your due diligence readiness needs to be so good that they are impressed with what you're showing them, because they see a lot of companies and most of the companies are not giving them the level, they might be at 80% or 90%. We're going to get you to 100% and build a whole story around it. And they're going to feel really good interacting with you. And that really creates a good connection point for the relationship to build from, because you automatically get into like, this is like a trustworthy group. They know what they're talking about. They understand the ins and outs of their business. They can explain it to me. Their financial projections reflect it. So that's really why it's critical.
Yeah. Like ultimately, if that's your plan, right? Like getting out in front of that as soon as possible is obviously ideal. But like as a guy that works in a similar type space, that I see people that are bringing to me maybe potentially acquiring businesses or or just evaluating, businesses for people. And man, it's so hard. There's so many mom and pop businesses or whatnot, right? Like, and it's just a total, it can be a total disaster from a financial standpoint. And me trying to advise my client on like what, is this a good deal or maybe should you pursue this or not? I'm like, I have no idea. I don't have any good data. Like, it's probably doing okay, but like I can't functionally even tell you what maybe this thing's worth because there's nothing there or very little there. Right?
Yeah. I could give you a good example of that. This was an engagement I didn't get. So a friend of mine runs a lower middle market investment bank, and when he found out, this is one of my college roommates, when he found out what I was doing, he said, "Hey, his strategy is he plays the long game with these family-owned businesses." And he gets in pretty early with them to develop a relationship for a sale. And he says, a lot of the times I get in there and it's exactly the situation that you're talking about. You can look at the tax returns and you can see that they're making money. And you know that if you back out certain owner operator expenses, it actually looks
your expenses.
It looks good, right? And you can look at a few years, but when they go to the accounting and ask for a forecast, it doesn't exist, or the accounting is. So he called me in on a situation it was kind of like a family owned sort of, let's just call it like an industrial business. And I think the owner was like in his 70s and the kids didn't want the business. And he had I want to say like retirement age bookkeeper who had been there for like 25 years.
Difficult.
And my friend told me, he's like, yeah, they haven't closed the books in a year. And I said, well, how much money is the business making? And, they were, his back of the envelope was like, I don't know, like $6 or $7 million a year of EBITDA. So really healthy business.
Yeah, nice business.
And, the proposal was basically like, look, if your point B is probably 12 months from now, we need to get in and like refine your systems, get all your books closed, do all your reconciliations, and also in the meantime build you a financial forecast that's going to resonate with the investment community. So that's an example of one where the banker's like throwing his hands up and saying this could be a really great outcome, but there needs to be like professionalization of finance to get to the other end. And I don't even know what ended up happening with that deal. He since sent me another one that actually called me back and said, we want to get this done. Can you come in and help us figure it out? So we're actually working on a proposal for that right now. But
I think it's just, me and you live in the financial space, and there's other pillars of each business, whether it's marketing or sales or whatever. And it's really just like raising your game to be professional in all those areas, right? Like, it's like, hey, we've run this on the back of a napkin, or not tracking any data whatsoever. And that's great. And, ultimately, you're making money and, you're doing okay. But like, for anybody to come in and give you any kind of value, for your business, like you gotta play the real professional game. You gotta stop being amateurs, right?
Yeah. But the other thing too that I would just throw out is, so with the first deal that I didn't get, the owner thought it was too much money. Now, if you look at the fees are actually very reasonable, but if you look at the amount of the fees and
the ROI you're going to get,
if you can get one more turn on EBITDA, if you can go, let's say it's a 5 million EBITDA business, and a sloppy looking company is going to get priced at like 4 times. So now you got a $20 million check that they're willing to cut you to buy the business. We come in there, you spend, over the course of a year, before you sell, in a situation like that, let's say they might spend like $20,000 a month on something like that, maybe a little bit more. Now they go from a 4 to a 6X. So now they sell it for 30. So just by cleaning it up, they can go from a 4 to 6 multiple. They made $10 million on a
$200,000
investment. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and by the way, the reason that you go from 4 to 6 times multiple is not just because the books look good. It's because you also can keep more parties at the table, because there's a lot of investors who just do not want to deal with the hairy situation.
Yeah.
So you're effectively eliminating, maybe like 3/4 of the buyer universe because they just don't even want to deal with you.
Yeah. The messy financial records are just, one piece of the puzzle. I mean, it speaks to there's probably a lot of problems underneath.
Right. The layers. It's like layers of issues. Yeah. Agreed. So,
Sal, you've helped, a lot of startups raise a whole lot of money, right? What's the biggest mindset shift founders or, owner operators they need to make, when seeking capital like that?
I think if they've got conviction about their growth plans, I think the biggest shift, and they've got like a compelling story with compelling numbers and projections, and it's a good team. I think the shift for them is like, so that's a positive situation where a deal can get done. I think the mind shift for them is maybe the best partner isn't going to pay you top dollar, but this firm is going to be living with you for like the next 5 years, and they are really going to be in your business. And you want people that you like, and that you can have a mutually trusting relationship with. So if they're paying you 10% less than the next guy, but in your gut they're just a better fit, you need to make that mind shift and not think so much about the short-term value.
Correct.
That's a big mind shift. I think that, if you're in a position where it's more challenged and you're not sure if you could raise money, then the mind shift is like, okay, well, how much dilution am I willing to take to get somebody to invest in this? And that's the other mind shift. If you're in a kind of middling sort of situation that looks pretty good, but, or maybe a good company, but just in a sector that's kind of out of favor, in order to attract the capital, you got to like really lower the price or go in with a lower price, and you got to get comfortable with that. So those are like the two big mind shifts. They're always related, in my view. There are other things, but they're generally related to valuation.
Yeah. And, you kind of made that, kind of comment, I guess, the importance of the right partnership there, right? And in my experience, I've done, small partnerships, here and there on all kinds of deals. But, I've had some amazing partnerships. I've had a couple of really, really bad ones. And it is like, what you say, taking a little lower valuation, but knowing for the next 5 years, I got somebody I like. I know somebody that's on my team, somebody I trust, somebody that I'm comfortable with. You're going to build that business so much better and faster with a partner like that, that 10% haircut or whatever you say you count will pale in comparison to the results you get from that, right?
Yeah.
So, as you guys do, somewhat like fractional CFO services, how do you approach building financial clarity and confidence for business owners, especially business owners, like you say, you go into some of these cases where they're not numbers people or think they're not numbers people. How do you approach trying to build some confidence and clarity in that space?
Usually the quickest way to do it is we start out, or as part of one of the first things that we build out for them is a 13-week cash flow, where we look at their weekly cash flow, and it's easy for them to understand. It's money in, money out, but we organize it in a way where we can project out the collections over the next like 13 weeks. And the 13-week cash flow model is like, it comes out of like, corporate finance and restructuring. It's like a very standard
quarter, right?
Approach. Yeah. That everybody uses to look at like what's going to happen in the next 13 weeks. And that's easy to understand. It's easy to update. It gets your head wrapped around all the ins and outs very quickly and how they change over time. It gives owner operators a sense of like, what's the difference between a prepaid expense and a non-prepaid expense. Mm-hmm. It looks at debt service payments, if they have any. Am I only paying interest? If I have to make a principal payment, when is that going to happen? And also gives them like immediate visibility into like the cycling of their receivables if they're in a receivables based business. And there's a lot of decisions that you can start making off of that. Like, for example, if it's a receivables based business and part of their cash outflows is inventory payments, we could immediately think about, okay, do we want to bring this client to an asset-backed lender who can put a working capital facility, lend against their receivables and against their payables to improve their cash position? And it becomes very black and white for the owner when you do it that way. A step after that is really building like a more robust forecast, which would be like a monthly forecast that we would then be reporting actuals against. And then that gives them a lot of clarity. It's like, okay, we're 60 days in, we've run we've cleaned up a bunch of stuff. We're on a weekly cadence with the cash flow model. Every Monday we look at what's going to happen for the week. And now we're closing the books for the second time, and we're going to report against a monthly budget that we put together with your input that is part of your 5-year projection. That level sets a whole lot for them. And I think also if they're going through constant liquidity crises, I think it relieves some of the burden of that because it gives them a lot of visibility, over the next few weeks. And they know what has to happen in order for it to all work.
I love that, a cash flow modeling thing, right? Because, ultimately that's what runs your business off of. And you see a lot of these smaller companies, say like a construction company or somebody that carries massive amount, or significant amounts of inventory or whatnot, or job costs. Cash flow is so important, right? Like your front money's coming and going, significant amounts of money is coming and going. And that's a situation that you'll see a lot of like smaller, I would say, mom and pop type businesses. But when I say mom and pop, I mean, they're doing significant revenue, call it $5 million or whatever. But like, they can't see the future. They can't see the cash flow. None of that's forecasted. And that, they could be making $1 million a year and like being constantly liquidity crises and running out of cash and scrambling all the time.
Right.
And when you have this forecast, it allows you to know what you need to do well in advance so you can prepare for it, right?
It sucks up a lot of brain cycles too for the leadership. If you constantly got in the back of their head, like, I need to make payroll. Mm-hmm. My top 3 vendors are calling me up for payment. That's just a lot of wasted energy that you can kind of control. And then you also have like, obviously payroll, you got to make payroll. But even if you have like some clients that are, some vendors that need to get paid and are nagging you, you at least have a story to tell them about when it's going to happen. You could say, hey, actually, I can't do it this week, but on, the 18th, I'm going to be able to pay you or whatever it is. And because you actually see it with your own eyes.
Yeah, you're not just making it up.
Yeah, you're risk adjusting like, okay, these 2 things need to happen before the 18th in order for me to pay this vendor. Yeah. And they're definitely going to happen. So you're just like, okay,
the probability on it, right?
Yeah, or they're like 90% likely to happen. And if they don't happen, here's how I'm going to do it,
Are you looking for a new tax experience? Looking for an advisor that actually brings you high-level ideas and proactively plans so you aren't overpaying your taxes? Or how about one that even just responds and communicates in a timely fashion? If any of that resonates with you, you probably just have a tax preparer and not a tax planner. And it is through the tax planning process where all the value is found. And when tax planning is done right, it has a positive return on investment. I'm Peyton Squires. I'm a CPA and owner of Squires Tax Planning. We work alongside entrepreneurs and high-income earners, helping them pay the least amount of income taxes, both legally and ethically. We have saved our clients hundreds of thousands of dollars through specific strategies, and we guarantee we can find multiple tax strategies that your current tax preparer hasn't told you about. If that interests you, head over to squirestaxplanning.com. There you can take our free assessment to see how likely it is that you are overpaying on your income taxes. From there, you can also book a free tax discovery call with our team to see what it would look like to have us working for you. So, Sal, can you share a moment when a strategic pivot you might have helped a business with kind of just made all the difference for the company?
Yeah. This is a little bit of a work in progress right now,
Sure.
but we try to be good financial operating partners to the leadership of the team. So we don't excuse ourselves from conversations about like what's actually happening in other parts of the business. Because one of the benefits that we bring to the table is that we have a lot of businesses that we see. And what works in a business that could be two businesses could be totally different, but there could be a functional thing that you've learned from one that applies to another. And so I had recently, and this is a change that they're going through now. I have a client, said we have a client that it's a business where they have to do customer outreach. And one of the big problems that they face when they do customer outreach, so these are people that are like in their database, they're allowed to call them, and they need to interact with them. It's part of delivering like the service. And part of the issue that they have is that they've got these pretty advanced call center operators it's not like just looking at a CRM and answering questions. They're actually advising the customers. So they're pretty well paid compared to what you would consider an average call center worker.
Sure.
So their time is very costly. And one of the issues they faced was contact rates. So like they're busy picking up the phone, trying to make contact, and they don't make contact. So they hang up and then they go to the next one.
Yeah.
And the company specializes in delivering a service. They're not specialists in running a call center. So we recommended to them that, hey, look, you have permissible purpose to call these people. So you should bring in an auto dialer and just have your queue of workers
ready to
working.
Yeah.
And they're just ready to answer. And they were kind of like, someone mentioned that once before, but we didn't really like internalize what it meant.
Yeah.
And we explained to them like, yeah, you can have no one calling and wasting their time calling. They're only going to answer when somebody's ready to talk.
You like triple productivity by doing that.
Exactly, by doing that. Yeah. And part of the reason that we got into this was that we were going through some financial modeling with the whole team, and there were a lot of complaints about utilization and how expensive it was. And we just zeroed in on like, hey, you already have a call center calling system. The vendor you have probably has an auto dialer. Call them up tomorrow and ask them what it's going to cost to implement it. And so that was the route that they went. So that's like a functional pivot that we had people do.
So obviously a bunch of listeners at least have the dream or the idea of, exiting their business someday, right? Building it up and getting in a position and exiting. What's your process for evaluating whether a business is, ready for either like rapid scaling or getting like, outside investment to really grow that company? How would you evaluate their business? If they're ready to be sold, or like what do they need to do to get to that?
Yeah. So a key part to raising capital or selling the business is demonstrating repeatable, reliable revenues, including like collecting on those revenues. And so even if you go earlier stage, there's this concept that a lot of people talk about in the venture world, which is demonstrating product market fit. And that could be, hey, I went through the seed stage. I have a small team. We've built this cool application or whatever it is. And I've got 25 clients that have bought it and continue to pay for it. That demonstrates repeatable revenue and that you've built a product that fits into a need that the buyer recognizes that they have. If you go to more mature businesses, what I tend to look for is stickiness of contracts. Are your customers coming back and buying from you over and over again? If they do cancel on you and leave, are these real rational reasons that are not related to like the fundamentals of your business? And then also on the revenue side, concentration of revenue. So if you have one customer that's like 80% of your revenue, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for an investor. It's just like way too much risk, because obviously you could just delete that client and it would all of a sudden you'd be losing money.
Totally different company.
So, and then, with the client stickiness, it's also like their consistency in paying you. Do you have really good collection rates, which demonstrates like, you've got reliable service that they want to pay for. They're not actually going out of business themselves. So they're in kind of like a stable category of clients. That's a key aspect. And then in terms of like demonstrating value to the next set of investors that come in, whether they're full on buyers or putting money in, I really like to look at the repeatability of the cost structure and the scalability of it, and also be able to tell a little bit of a story about, hey, here are like 2 or 3 other things that the business isn't doing today that it can do that will create more value for you in the future. Right? Because it's not all about just like necessarily the same thing over and over again, particularly if you're dealing with growth investors. I think if you're dealing with like lower middle market buyout funds, they can get more comfortable.
Consistency,
they're probably looking more for the consistency. They put a little bit of leverage on the business. They also know that they're going to make improvements to the business to make a return. But the growth equity investors who maybe are coming in to buy like 20-30% of your business, they're going to want to know that there's some other optionality there that could potentially give them an even better return than they were expecting.
Yeah. You need to tell them a story of how, like, as we grow this, how you continue to unlock efficiencies and value and grow and improve the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, turning the conversation a little bit, Sal, to people that haven't even started up their business yet. What's one piece of advice you'd give to somebody that's even just looking to go into the entrepreneur space, about to kick off? What, like, in any piece of advice you'd give to somebody, at the beginning when they're just launching their business?
I would say a couple of things. One is we're in an age of technology where there's a lot of like inexpensive tools that you can use to leverage your time better. I mean, AI and just using
huge
Claude or something like that to do stuff for you is an example. So it takes a little bit of investment up front, but if you've got certain repeat tasks that interfere with your dedicated time to like acquiring customers, refining your product, working with your key team members, and find tools that help you automate some of that stuff out of your day. Like a thing that I use a lot are AI note takers on video calls. They give me a tremendous amount of operating leverage in terms of like highlighting what the key points of the conversation are, tasks that need to be done. Also just taking the transcript, putting it into Claude, and then having Claude just do something with it for me. Those are good examples of it. I can give you a real example that I did yesterday.
Let's hear it.
So I had we were on a call with a client that has a new operating role that they need to put in to basically work on their revenue management. They have a lot of transaction volume, and they have a bunch of traps in place that catch issues as they arise, but they don't have like one person who's like overseeing it and basically doing a daily report to the executive team about here's the flow of revenues into the business in the last 24 hours. One person on my team specifically have a lot of experience building out this kind of a function in our previous job. So we were educating them on what needed to be done. The person that they chose to do it understood the accountabilities and just kind of like regurgitated out like all of the traps that they have, but didn't have like an organized view of how it's all supposed to go down. So we had a long conversation about it. She sent a bunch of notes about their different systems. I took all of that and I handed it I put it into Claude, and I said, I'm building out a new revenue assurance function for a company that does high transaction volumes. Here's a transcript of the conversation with the team about what needs to be done. Here's an email memo with all of the systems that they currently have in place. Write me an outline for a daily report that the head of revenue assurance can use as a template for reporting on this on a daily basis. And
would you have the answer in a second?
60 seconds later, I've got like a template. I put it into a Google Doc so I can edit it. And it had like 90% of what I needed in it, you know, and I moved things around. It even had little charts with like red light, green light, yellow light, you know, all of that stuff. So there's opportunities to do that, to leverage your time better, you know.
I'm so excited, you know, about AI and all the tools and stuff. Like we've been massive, you know, we've been trying to implement it in every aspect of, you know, of my firm. But some of the coolest things we're doing with it right now is like, you know, me and the leadership team have a space, you know, where we all interact, and inside Perplexity is what we use. But with that, you can attach files and whatnot. So like ultimately we put all our workflows and SOPs and everything into this workspace.
Yeah.
All anybody ever has to do is just query of like, okay, what's the next step in this process? What do I need to do next? And it's just all right there. You know, AI can read all the documents and just, you know, you want to talk about training, new hires, whatever. It'll tell you how to interact with customers based off our core values and our mission and our vision. Like what is expected of you, right? Like, and we're just at the edge of like beginning to deal with this. And you're right, like the AI note takers, you know, I have them on meetings. For me, I love it because like I don't have to remember anything. Like I can sit here and just interact with you and connect, you know, and I'm not having to write notes or try to remember, you know, some piece of data that you gave me, right? I get off the meeting, those AI notes, they go straight into my CRM system, which is also layered with AI. I can pull up anybody in my CRM system, and up in the right corner, it'll give me a little paragraph of like, if you read that, anybody can pull up a contact in my CRM, read the little paragraph, and kind of know what's going on with the client. Last interactions, and it's all just a synopsis right there, which is just mind-boggling what you can do with that information.
Yeah. To go back to your question, so I think the tools definitely could help an entrepreneur leverage their time better. And then I think more from a practical standpoint, some people do not develop these plans because they need to build a lot of technology or something like that. And then it becomes a different model. But if you're in a business model where you can go out and get revenue right away, really prioritize that. Go do that, because the exercise of doing that is going to have, aside from bringing cash in that you can then leverage and use for things to continue to build your business, you're also going to learn a lot about how to talk to the clients. What are the features of what you're offering that they most like? You get the story down, you understand the mechanics of what you need to do, and it forces you to also like think further ahead in the business, so that if you get the next one and the one after that and the one after that, you have to start planning like, okay, well now how do I take care of all these
operational problems, right?
Right.
To fix those, right?
But you need that in order to grow, right? And so I would say, if you can get the revenue, get the revenue. I can give you another story. This isn't one of my clients, but this is somebody that I met at I'm part of a group of operating executives, and they had an annual conference, and I met a young entrepreneur there who had just raised some money, and she had a business that was basically customer acquisition, and she was coming from the technology side, and she was struggling integrating her customer acquisition funnel, her front facing, like, I'm going to face the world, bring people in and have them choose different vendors that are on my back end to take a service.
Yeah.
She was very concerned about integrating the vendors' availability platform, like this is when they have time slots open for this service, integrating that into her front end so that when the client comes in, they're looking at like a live availability, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she had like burned through some capital, and she was struggling with the integrations. Like the people who wanted to be on her platform just didn't have the time to put the effort in. And I said to her, I said, how quickly do these things sell out? She's like, well, some sell out their availability very quickly, but most don't. And I said, so would any of your investors complain? Would any of the founders complain if you weren't integrated and you didn't have integration, but next month you generated $100,000 of bookings? No, no one would complain.
Be happy.
I said, so then why don't you do a half step where you just get a bunch of Google Sheets and have somebody on your team call once a week to get the availability and just plug the Google Sheet into your front end. And if occasionally there's like an overbooking, you just figure out how to deal with that.
Yeah, just deal with the problem.
Because you need to get the revenues in, because the reason these guys are not moving quickly is they have no idea how many bookings you're going to send them.
Yeah. When you generate all the bookings for them, then they're much more likely to just jump on board with you.
Right. And no one's ever going to complain when you're bringing revenue in.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, I mean, and by the way, if you start drinking from a fire hose, okay, that's a high class problem, then you
got the resources to figure it out though, too.
Right. So that's why I say, focus on, if you can generate the revenue. Don't worry about delivering like the perfect product. Worry about, if you're delivering the value, perfection is not going to make you get more revenue or necessarily make you get more revenue or allow you to charge more.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that just kind of perfection or whatnot, stopping you from just perfectionism, I guess, stopping you from just pushing forward. I love the idea of, let's generate as much revenue as we can, and we can figure out all the problems with said revenue. Right?
Yeah. By the way, she did see me the next day and said that she had already had a meeting with her team to pivot to some version of like Google Sheets and assigning someone on the team to be the relationship manager who would keep everything updated manually so that they can go and push for more bookings.
Yeah. And that's amazing. And what I would just point out to listeners there is like just the value of, I know you said you met her at a conference or something, but like the value of, once again, not trying to do any of this stuff in isolation, right? Doing this in relationships and mentors and networking and conferences and stuff like that allows you to, that girl had a problem, didn't know how to solve it. Talk to Sal. Sal's just like, oh, well, why don't you just do this, right? And to her, that's mind blowing. But like, it's the value of like being around people that maybe are steps ahead of you or just from different industries and different experiences. And like, you could have the biggest problem in the world and they just look at it for a second and just say, well, just do this.
Right. It can be very isolating to be the sole decision maker. Having other good people around you that you trust is definitely beneficial.
So Sal, I got one last question for you. Looking back to the beginning of, your career, your journey, your business you've started, if you can go back and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I would say that definitely pay attention to the quality of the conversations that you're having with your team. Be kind and be direct. I probably generally am good coverage in both of those areas, but when you're really like going quickly and the business is just flowing by you, it could take you a little bit of like just regrouping yourself in order to like maintain that mantra of communications.
Yeah.
You just need to kind of remind yourself of that. And I understand that now as like a fact that I try to always reel myself into.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned that. Whereas if somebody had told me that years ago, I would have probably used it a lot more, or at least I would have reminded myself a lot more of that.
Yeah. And I think that's something, your typical kind of high driving, high autonomous entrepreneur, that's the typical profile. You're right. Like you got to be careful that you're not just like running by or running over your team or just running so fast or creating so much chaos they don't know what's going on. You're not communicating with them. Yeah. So that's just great advice. Sal, This has been a great conversation, man. Anything you'd like to leave the listeners before we sign off? Please tell them what's the best way they can connect with you, get to know more about you.
Yeah, you can check us out at CFOProAnalytics.com. You can also just Google my name and hop to my LinkedIn page to learn a little bit more about me. But if you go to our company site, you can check out the rest of our team. There's some really cool calculators that we have on there if you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to, figure out equity dilution or customer acquisition costs. We've got some simple tools there that can help you do that. And there's a lot of, good content on there about issues that small business owners and entrepreneurs face and kind of what kind of advice we kind of give in our blog posts on those types of things. So, but yeah, definitely feel free to reach out if you think we can help you. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, awesome, Sal. Well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been a great
Peyton, nice meeting you. Thank you so much for the great questions.
Absolutely, buddy. Well, listeners, we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you found it valuable, please rate, review, and share it. That is the best way to help us build this and reach more people, as we're trying to accomplish our goal of help creating more healthy, wealthy, and wise entrepreneurs. You can follow us on social media by searching for me, Peyton Squires, or going to PeytonSquires.com. On the website and social media, we're always sharing tips of personal growth, and there we can actually interact. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.